Simpsons Index, an online spreadsheet that is also a podcast. This is the podcast.
Coming to you out of SideQuest Studios, this is the Simpsons Index, episode 207. Hello out there, I'm your host, Elliot Jay O'Neill, and joining me today in different places. I keep doing that, I keep forgetting we're not in the same space. Anyway, it's the boys from Community Noticeboard.
Hey.
Hello.
Featuring Jamie Kirk.
That's me.
Drew Bensley.
Hello.
And Alex White.
Howdy.
And yes, of course, this is a Simpsons Index, the podcast where we watch and review 3 episodes of The Simpsons at a time, but the twist is each episode must come from a different decade. Now, Jamie, long-time listeners probably remember you from your previous appearance with Rosie and Andrew from We'll Just Tell Your Mother We Ate It All.
It's my very well-received episode, I assume.
It brought in so many 5 stars and positive comments.
From your poorly received podcast.
Yeah, all 3 of the We'll Just Tell Your Mother We Ate It All listeners migrated over, I assume.
Me included. But who's this new crew you're running with?
These are the best boys in the world.
What a couple of upgrades.
I mean, if you thought Andrew Hastings was good, well, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, these are 2 of my best friends, 2 stand-up comedians as well. And we have a little podcast called Community Noticeboard where we interview people about suburbs they grew up in.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was easily my favorite new podcast of last year. And yeah, you guys have had some amazing guests on. Can't speak highly of you guys enough. But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today. Now, Jamie, you've already asked some of the first-time questions. But yeah, turning it to Drew and Alex, we like to ask our new guests, what's your Simpsons history? Where did the show begin with you?
Probably broadly the same answer. We're just the exact right age. So I got to catch it, would have been 6 when it started or 5, and then watch just because it was a cartoon and your kids like cartoons. And then as they play them on repeat and you're 10, you get a few more jokes. And then a little bit older, you get more jokes. So it was literally the perfect age to watch it as I grew up and then just get something new from it every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was just saying, we had, me and my brother's 2 years younger than me, and we had Fox when we were kids, and it would be on Simpsons Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 12 o'clock. So there'd be 4 hours twice a week. And it used to infuriate my parents because my mum didn't watch it, but she'd seen the episode so many, because we'd seen the episode 8 times. And she's like, I've seen the Monorail one. You have seen the Monorail one. What are you watching this shit for? And she got so mad at us for we probably watched 10, 12 hours a week, but it was just this reliable show you could always put on, and just so, I think one of those shows that just shapes your sense of humor. So then, even to this day, and my girlfriend grew up not watching it a lot, but I'll just make so many references to The Simpsons, and she's looking at me like I'm speaking some other language. It's just very
you're the funniest man alive.
Yeah, because I'm referencing the nuclear power plant or something. She's like, what are you talking about? So it is sort
Lucas
of ingrained.
Heights.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of ingrained in your formation. I wonder, and that's I guess Drew's point. I wonder if someone growing up sort of 10 years earlier or 10 years later would it be the same thing? But definitely, I've probably watched just hundreds of hours over the years of Simpsons. But interestingly, not the sort of latter 2 seasons, so the latter 2 decades of it, I guess. So this is a bit refreshing, I suppose.
Well, that's the other question we ask. Where did you drop off from the show? Do you remember if there was an episode that rubbed you the wrong way? Or are you still watching it? Are you insane like me?
I definitely dropped off. I can't remember. I'll have to think. There was definitely a couple of episodes where I was like, what is this? It's not that they've, I think people like Simpson hardcore nerds get upset about the Armin Tanzarian one. It's but I think they're funny. I was never it was just, I think there was a new one. There was a new one that had Blink 182 as a cameo or something, or it had Tony Hawk as a cameo or something.
Had both.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Episode 300, baby.
Well, it may not have been chronologically I got up to that and dropped off, but I just, whenever that came on one time, I saw that and just saw, this is dog shit. This, what the fuck? And I hated, that was my pet peeve for Simpsons, was just the random cameo that made no sense. And so I'm sure that started happening around season 15 or 16 or something.
Yeah,
but,
somewhere around there. I remember, I remember that one for sure. I remember the one where they went to Japan. I started being like, I don't think I like this anymore. But I think at the time, a lot of the newer ones I was laughing at, and then having gone back and watched some of them now, I'm like, these are shit. Like they don't hold up. But I definitely had that Japan, that overseas era. I think the newest one that I actually like is the one where Homer gets medicinal marijuana. And maybe because that was like a big deal, they were like advertised like it's going to be on at 9 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. or it was like this whole adults only.
Yeah, they did a brief like Simpsons up late run where they did like that in the episode where Marge and Homer were getting freaky in public and all that sort of stuff.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, neither of you kept up with the show then. And so, thank you for letting me subject you to what they're pumping out these days. Like this episode. We just watched Season 32, Episode 6, Podcast News. First released in November of 2020, it was directed by Matthew Fornan and written by David X. Cohen. And this was his first Simpsons writing credit since 1998, before he left for Futurama. In this episode, Marge and Lisa get addicted to true crime podcasts, and it turns out Abe Simpson is the subject of one of them, and called Guilty Grandpa. Hey guys, what do we think?
I honestly what's that?
I liked it.
I also liked it.
I thought it was better than I'm not saying my pet peeve about New Simpsons is weird cameos and just like current event, like they try to be South Park, where it's like, what's happening right now? Let's now write for that, instead of just having a funny story. And so reading, like when I was like, this is about podcasts, I was like, this will suck. But it actually was. They had some funny-ish jokes in it, and I didn't mind the actual story, and I didn't mind it. There was definitely some like real corniness, and I think the fucking Stellan Skarsgård cameo and all that gets me real. I hate stuff like that. I'm just like, why? Just don't demean yourself, dude. To have one throwaway shitting line. But other than that, I thought there was some funny moments.
I don't know if anyone's articulated this better than I'm about to, but there's something so unsettling.
Simpsons is dumb.
About the Simpsons having modern technology. Because I think of it as like this timeless show, this classic show, but obviously it's always been very modern, cutting edge. So like in 1994, like they were having jokes about like the Apple Newton and stuff, where like if that happened today, I'd be like, ugh, they're doing a joke about like a Microsoft Zune, lame. So like it's a weird thing where like I know I'm wrong, but like seeing them with an iPhone and seeing their TV as a flat screen, I'm like, that's not what The Simpsons is. But then like there's no reason it shouldn't be.
Yeah. It just feels like placement. Like I think if a new episode Bart had a Dreamcast, I wouldn't be jarred, because I'd be like, oh, they're just, it'd still sort of be a time capsule thing. Yeah. But I think like because it's sort of, whether it's product placement-y or whether it's just, we can't think of anything to make a joke about. Let's just what's the newest thing. But I think is that's the problem with it. And whatever, you're right. There's no real like I said, South Park would do that, and no one's going to criticize them for it.
The difference with that is like in the old ones, they do have technology, but it's never the central part of the story. Like the stories are always timeless stories. It's not about podcasts in the way that this is. And I really thought I was going to hate it, especially, and like the opening joke with Homer having the 2 a.m. ham or whatever, I was like, I almost turned it off and called in sick for this pod. I was like, I can't stand this. But then there was like a couple of funny jokes in a row. And I think by the end, I was like, I think from my memory of mid-season 13 on, this was like objectively, I think, funnier. Like the jokes were better.
Yeah, I don't think it might have something to do with David X. Cohen being behind the wheel on this one, because especially, talking about The Simpsons with more modern technology or whatever, it often feels like they're just sort of presenting the thing and just saying, here's the thing, without like having anything really meaningful to say on it. Like there's a couple of episodes that have like Nintendo Wii's and shit like that. But yeah, this one I felt like, they understood the appeal of podcasts, especially these true crime ones, and like knew why people loved them so much, but also some of the badder parts about them. And so I think they were able to develop some pretty okay material out of it.
They nailed the voice of the podcast chick. Like that got me good.
I think having Kent Brockman losing his like being challenged by it was good, because it was like a bit of a throwback to, like, it wasn't some new guy who, you know, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't some new character they throw in just to drive the story. For that, at least, that was interesting, you know, because I always think that my limited sort of experience with the newer Simpsons is they're not driven by like the characters we like, because they're sort of worn out, you know. It's like Mo is throwing a joke in, but there's not a lot of, you know what I mean? I feel like that it's just the Simpsons plus other stuff. So that was good, I thought, at least to sort of make it an interesting storyline in the same context. But 2 a.m. ham I was just, whatever episode, one of you guys will know, where Homer's eating cheese at midnight.
Yeah, 64 slices of American cheese.
Yeah, and it's just like, what is this, a throwback? Have they forgotten this joke? And the other thing, it was very similar to Homer Badman in a way, like almost like an updated, not similar, but there was definitely some like, we didn't do it, throwing bricks through the window, everyone outside, which... I get that's that old trope about, I mean, every Simpson, there's so many episodes, so how could they not revisit some sort of similar lines? But that was something else that caught my eye.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we like to, just sort of ask some questions about the episode on the podcast. First of all, the wackiness. Do you think this was a particularly, like, wacky episode of The Simpsons? How'd they use, like, the cartoon space?
I don't think it was overly wacky.
No.
I mean, in terms of, like, The Simpsons being bad at satire being the kind of prevalent thing for newer ones, I thought they kind of nailed true crime podcasts and the tone of them.
Yeah.
The annoying instrumentation, the vocal fry. I thought, like, Chrissy Nangle is a very funny improv comic actress, and so I really like what she did with the voice of this. And, like, in terms of annoying voice cameos, like, the Stellan Skarsgård thing did feel kind of like, all right, we got a celebrity in here, we're shoehorning it in, when they had a perfectly good person playing that the podcast host and didn't make a big deal about it. I thought she was fantastic in that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was wacky. I don't remember any.
I think it was wacky as it got was probably the 2 a.m. ham and Marge, the brick going through Marge's hair, which bugged me a little bit. I don't know why. It left the brick size hole.
Oh, I tell you what I did like about the brick, though, the ender. And it landed on its end, fun. And then he's like, we got an ender, and everyone was stoked about it.
Yeah, something good about a mob turning their anger into, oh, nice.
That also, to me, just seems like such a writer's room, like a guy flipping a water bottle and trying to get it, and everyone being like, yes. And then being like, oh, this is pretty relatable, let's put it in. And I think it was.
Yeah. Well, the most wackiest bit for me was fucking having Yardley Smith as a guest voice actor in this episode.
Yeah.
That was my least favorite part of this.
Yeah, that was, and because she plugged her own pod, and I'm like, I don't know what there's some, I don't know why that's wrong, but it just seems weird.
Well, it was the delivery as well. You might know me from my podcast, Small Town Big. Yeah.
I
think the reference to her being on The Simpsons was kind of too cute by half as well. Like, if you're gonna do that, maybe a slightly better joke than just like a look off to the camera.
Yeah. I think if Lisa had referenced the podcast and made some sly, tongue-in-cheek, like inside joke, that would have been less annoying, You know what I mean? Like, if you know the pod, then, it's her who does the thing or whatever. But
it's like how they handled the critic, That was like a different show, but they did it in a cleverer way.
Yeah. So her just walking up and like, hey, can't, like that.
Yeah.
That was a bit stupid.
I guess, like, the B plot is kind of wacky, right? Like, it is Grandpa Simpson getting accused of murder, and then the turn is that she was going to fake her own death, and as she was leaping off, he couldn't hear the rest of the instructions. Yeah. But, like, I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
How many fucking people has Abe fucked over the years? Seriously. He's, like, had 18... He's had more girlfriends than anyone. How old is he? There's so many episodes.
He's hung that bolo tie on the doorknob a few times, dude.
You'd know, Elliot. And the ones that we've missed, has he scored any more dames? Like, has he had other girlfriends in between seasons 12 and 32?
Several. He was dating a jazz singer as well at some point, and almost went to Europe to marry her and everything. They just never run out of ideas for this show.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of, like, even though it does smack of we're doing an Abe thing again. It does kind of track character-wise with the Abe Simpson that's always been around as kind of a dirty dog, you know? Like, he always has been portrayed as that in regards to, like, Homer's mom and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I like that how they can incorporate those elements of his character into the, you know, interviews and the accusing and everything. And it's like, oh, yeah, these people can actually build a case that this dude is not good. Like,
Yeah.
But leading into the heart of the episode, you know, Grandpa's being accused, Marge and Lisa and everyone's trying to profess his innocence. What do you reckon?
It worked, and it stood out again, I think, in comparison to why I sort of hated some of the newer episodes. It actually had a bit of heart. I didn't love the resolution to that story, that it was just like Grandpa taking her on her word and then nothing. Like, you know.
Yeah, the whole senile outro into that just kind of felt like a bit of a cop-out to me.
But I thought it was good because at the start I was like, oh, this is an A plot, B plot thing, which I didn't. You know, it's never really funny. It's just like, we got to fill another 8 minutes. But then when it was actually the same storyline, I thought, oh, okay, this is, you know, good. I guess to me, when it came together a little bit, it was a bit more rewarding than just having a screwing around again, you know. Yeah. So, but heart, I thought it was. So hold on, when you say heart, do you just mean the heart of the core of the story, or you mean actually?
That's probably I should have probably set that up better. That on the Simpsons Index, we usually explore the wackiness and the heart as sort of the things that people really like about the Simpsons, that they can sort of strike this balance between the two. And so when we talk about heart, talk about the emotional core, resonance of the story, and character interplay and all that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, it was pretty light-hearted. I don't think it was too deep, but it certainly wasn't sort of, missing anything like that.
Yeah, I think that the Grandpa stuff was played for laughs as much as it needed to be. Like, it wasn't particularly full of emotion that they were worried that he was going to get put away, but it also wasn't callous in a way where they were like, oh, who gives a fuck? Like, just throw them to the wolves. Like, they did care. There were stakes to this. Well, interestingly enough as well, like, I didn't realize, like, it took about almost 3.5 minutes until Bart was in, like, any family stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember watching it just being like, oh, when's Bart going to show up? I know he's obviously not the...
You're a 6-year-old boy in 1994.
Yeah, exactly. I still call it Bart Simpson.
Is he going to do the Bart man in this episode?
Yeah. But it was I just thought it was interesting that, like, the whole family was there, and at no point was Bart there until, like, kind of a throwaway joke. And he's, like, very light in the episode, too.
Yeah.
And when he's not there, everybody should be asking, where's Bart?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, normally the episodes are like, the funny ones are with Bart and Homer, and then Lisa and Marge are relegated to sort of just secondary characters. But I guess that was sort of different, that they were driving it from a Simpsons point of view.
And the one thing that did sort of bother me with the heart is that, and I think it's like a perpetual criticism of New Simpsons, is how 2D Homer is. And at no point, Lisa and Marge are showing some concern for Grandpa, and Homer's just like, I've been saying he's a murderer this whole time. Just like, he's always been goofy, but he's just two-dimensional now. He's got, like, one note.
Yeah, well, then they started making him so dumb, then he just became dumb, and then it was just like, well, this is what's funny now, is Homer is just an idiot, and as cartoonish as can be, instead of everyone else.
Well, talking before about bringing Kent Brockman into the story, like, so often the Simpsons B and C tier characters are just, like, there to, like, do their sketch, do their line, very sort of Little Britain, and, say the line, Bart. But it's good that they were able to use their C tier character in, a meaningful way. And, going on from that, we also like to ask, did it feel like an episode of The Simpsons? Are the characters behaving like themselves? Is this vaguely the show we know and love?
I think broadly, again, I went into this thinking season 32, I can't believe this is going to be so bad. So my reaction was that it was a lot closer. Like, if you just showed me that episode without the context of the podcast being a newer thing and said place it, I would be like, oh, that might be season like 17, like just on the edge of when it started to fade. I would never have expected it would be so recent. So I felt that it was a lot more close to what familiar than normal. But maybe that was just, like I said, because I was expecting it to be just a completely different show altogether.
Yeah.
It was just uncanny valleys for me. Like, I recognize all the characters, but doesn't feel like The Simpsons to me, and I don't
what's
think
really
I can
weird
get over that.
is just the fact that it's like slightly high def animation.
It
just throws you off, and it's such a weird thing. And the other thing that really threw me off was Marge's voice, so gravelly.
Yeah.
I don't know if the actress has just chain smoked for the last 20 years and it's slowly chipping away. But it's so much, and I'm like, I googled. I'm like, did the Marge actress die and they replaced her with someone else? Because it's just so jarring. But it's probably if you just watched it consecutively, you probably wouldn't be so put off.
Mm.
No, that's it. And yeah, it's just like Julie Kavner's in her 70s now, and yeah, you do got to wonder, at least listening to these recent episodes, like how much more she's got in her before, either she or her voice gives out.
Well, that'll be the next step, is Abe will date her and she'll come on as a cameo as herself. And Abe will fuck her.
But, I mean, just on that briefly, playing Dr. Hibbert in this episode was not Harry Shearer. This is after, they replaced all the white actors playing black characters. And, so this was played by Alex Dessert. He was the blind guy in Becca.
Oh,
right.
Jake.
Right.
Yeah. So now he's
I didn't
voicing...
notice.
I didn't notice a change,
Yeah.
Not at all, really.
I thought it was good.
Is he attempting to do a Hibbert?
Yeah, that's him doing Hibbert, and he's also playing Carl in a couple of other roles in the show now,
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, yes or no, do you think you guys would watch this episode again?
If it was on.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't, but if David X. Cohen wrote another one that came out, I would watch that. I would go, okay. If I'd feel like I wouldn't be put off. I certainly wasn't
not
good enough.
tarnished his reputation in any way, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And it maybe just proves, the ultimate debate for me is does The Simpsons just this thing that you can't write for anymore because it's just run out, just the characters and whatever you need it to make The Simpsons is done? Or are just the writer's bad now versus what we used to be, And maybe getting an old writer and making a good episode sort of might lean it one way or the other. But that was definitely interesting. So it's not like I would turn it off if it came on, but it was a pretty good surprise.
If you're finding yourself in the situation where you're in the midst of a Fox Simpsons marathon.
Yes, and it came on, you're not switching to Fox 2 and trying to catch the end of another one.
I have no qualms napping to it either.
That's a good watch. A good nap episode, yeah. So we like to try see what we can do to improve this one as well. So Drew, we'll start with you. What would you like to change about this episode?
It's literally the same thing I want to change about all Simpsons that isn't the Simpsons I like. I'm ripping the guts out of it. I want more. I want the team from King of the Hill to try their hand at show running the Simpsons. Put the story first and foremost and the heart back into it, and then try and get those gags that come organically from the story.
Absolutely.
So, just a small ask on my end.
Yeah, make it King of the Hill.
I want to see King of the Hill attempt The Simpsons, much in the same way that the guy from Becker is attempting Hibbert.
The skin's too yellow. Can we make it more Hank Hill pinkish hue? Would be.
They need another finger.
I don't like nuclear energy. I want propane gas.
I want a handsome new character called Drew Bensley, and he's 7 foot tall.
Surrounded by beautiful women. James, what would you like to change about this episode?
I mean, I don't know if I'd change much. I thought I was looking at some of the podcast sign gags, and there were a few of them where I thought okay, but it felt like maybe they would have put a bit more effort into them in the olden days. I know a lot of them are takes on very stupid true crime podcast names already, but a lot of them were just kind of rote. I mean, I don't think I'd change much about the main plot, just because I think it was quite well done for how little time they have in these episodes now. They're only 18, 19 minutes now. And it zipped along quite well, and everything got resolved. Maybe, I guess the thing is, I wish it was maybe 10 to 20% funnier. Like, if that's what I'd change. Like, if there was
Not
a joke.
30% funnier, because that would.
But I mean, like,
that would
I
be too
think
much.
Too fun.
I think if you made that 20% funnier, like, you'd have no problem stacking that in like a season 7, 8, 9 like context. Like, if there were just a couple more jokes, like there was some
Yeah.
good stuff in there, but sometimes it felt like a little few and far between.
It was like, I agree. There was a couple of like the podcast ad, and it was like shampoo something,
Yeah.
shampoo
Yeah.
drones, and it's like that they could have really done a funny joke. Now I'm not going to come up with one that's funny here or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to beat shampoo drone, but I feel like that was like, you know, hey, that's an opportunity to do that sort of throwaway joke thing that like it's almost like a free kick, right? Like ads on podcasts, they're not forcing anything to make a joke that's a silly thing about that, but then they just missed that altogether, which I think like. If I was going to expect something to be funny in a newer Simpsons, it would be that sort of joke, right? But the actual, like, yeah, so for me, like, I think, like, Jamie's right, maybe, like, just punch it up a little bit.
Maybe
more.
that's what I meant in regards to like the podcast and the names and the sight gags. Like, it seems like oddly for The Simpsons, and especially for someone like David X. Cohen, it seems oddly like lacking in specificity, where like, you know, considering maybe almost every person who listens to podcasts knows like the 4 products that get advertised on podcasts, like boner pills, you know,
mattresses,
shaving.
mattresses,
Stamps.com.
sex toys,
Squarespace.
and fucking coffee. Like the shampoo thing is like, all right, well that's, you know,
They
that's
just needed punching up. It's like fill it in, shampoo drone, and then just go around and come up with the funniest thing. There's no weight on it. It
feels like
doesn't
maybe
matter.
the script said like come up with some funny podcast stuff, and they maybe didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me that I agree, and then get rid of the weird cameo. I hate that.
Yeah, get rid of the weird cameo for sure.
And the ending was a bit, like you say, it didn't have to be. It doesn't have to fucking make sense, but it's got to be funny at least, or just, you know, you can't just be like, oh, I forgot what you said. That was strange, but other than that, yeah, I think the rest of it was pretty good.
Yeah, like for me, the main thing that I want actually is like just another scene with Grandpa and just need to double check her name. Vivian sent Charmaine, whatever. Another scene with Grandpa and Vivian, because I just wanted to care a little bit more about that part of the story. And, you know, it's nice when Grandpa's getting his and, you know, is all acting all cute and lovey and all that sort of stuff. I just, you know, I wanted the scene with the couple's colonoscopy is what I'm saying.
I think there's a DeviantArt page where you can see that.
But also just to bring her up as well, Vivian was played by Morgan Fairchild, who's, I don't think a name you guys would recognize, but she's just such a prolific actress.
She's Chandler's mum in Friends.
Oh, there we go. I was going to, because she's made a bunch of cameos in sitcoms and stuff, and lots of soap opera TVs and straight to DVD and VHS movies. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a cameo that you can do on The Simpsons, and no one's mad about it. You know, have Skarsgård be someone else. But yeah,
well, that's the thing. It's always the difference of a cameo playing a character rather than the whole "What are you doing in Springfield?" Insert name here.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that about does it. Any other notes time? Drew, do you have any other notes about this episode you want to mention before we rank it?
I would have changed the plot so she faked her own death to try and frame him. She was trying to get the money somehow. I think that would have been better, and then we could have had a bit of sadder, you know, the family come together for Grandpa. The only thing I'll say is I loved the ASMR jokes with Homer instantly falling asleep. I thought that was hilarious.
See, I hated the setup, but I actually really loved the callback.
Yeah, okay.
I think both, like, especially the animation of him both times, him hitting his head while he went to sleep, I thought was so funny.
It was perfect physical comedy.
Yeah.
And the just another 2 jokes that stood out were the repeat of Ken Brockman going, and now to just open this door into disaster. And then my favorite joke of the whole thing was when Grandpa goes to the bathroom and Homer says, quick, he's in the bathroom, we only have an hour to talk. That got me good.
That's funny.
How about you, Alex?
I had a couple of little jokes that cracked me up. The ender that Jamie said, I thought it was funny when Wiggum was like, that came back no such test. That was funny. It was like we checked him for being pushed or something. I thought that was good. And just on sight gags, because I noted it, and it was really a Futurama style thing where the comic book guy was playing like World of Warcraft against. Did you see that? And the game was called Conflict of Enemies, which I thought was quite just as a little throwaway background joke. And Milhouse was in it, and there was little things like that I'm like, that was sort of charming as well. So there's a couple of little jokes like that I noted down that made me laugh, or just at least caught my attention.
Yeah, comic book guy with the game controller and also typing on a forum on his laptop and another screen set up with some news or some shit. It's like, that's my last 4 months. Fuck yeah. How about you, James? Any other notes?
Yeah, actually, Alex just reminded me, like, speaking of the kind of... It does seem like with David X. Cohen, you do get a little attention to detail. And so even the scene where, like, you went to Skinner's house, just seeing, like, the silhouettes that were on the wall as a callback to past episodes, I thought was great. And there's also a scene where, like, there's all the podcast royalty, and then at the back, they've got all the drawings of, like, the host of Serial and stuff. And why aren't we on there? Like, where's the picture of Community Noticeboard? We came out in 2020. It's the perfect time for synergy, David X.
If that is your real name.
Yeah.
Well, he is listening, so, he'll get the message.
Mate, we'd love to have you on, David.
Sure.
And yeah, my only other note was I actually thought Chief Wiggum was really good in this episode, and he didn't even confess. Rude, like
That's what I was saying about. I like it when the plot is like they've got a cop, they've got a news reader, like just find a way, because we know Wiggum, we don't have to set him up. It's not some new character, and that's why he's so funny. Like having the clumsy idiot detective or whatever. Like the jokes land way better when it's not just some random fucking person involved. So I thought that was really good.
Definitely. All right, guys, it is time to rank this thing. On the Simpsons Index, we rank using our 6-point scale, which starts down the bottom at failure. Maybe if the episode was just meh, you give it participant. But for positive ratings, we got okay bronze, good silver, excellent gold, and for the best of the very best, the episodes which are essential to the Simpsons experience, we give those cubic zirconia. I'm going to go first. Let me show you how it's done. I think I'm going to land on a bronze for this one. I think I almost got up to silver, but I think it just kind of petered out in the end a little too much. And yeah, definitely it was felt more front-loaded with the better material. So yeah, bronze for me. Jamie, what do you reckon?
I hit it was silver. Like, it was funny enough and engaging enough to be considered a silver for me. Like, I would comfortably rank that as a good episode.
Yeah. How about you, Drew?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I reckon bronze and a half. It looked silver in particular lights, but it was a bronze.
Sure thing.
Yeah,
Alex.
I'd probably have to agree. I'd probably have to say twisted arm to say silver, but I think bronze.
All right. So that'll be a shiny bronze altogether, and that really does feel right. Glad you were brave enough to go silver there, Jamie. I was not.
Of course. These are the hot takes that people love me for.
All right. Well, stay tuned for some more hot takes when, after the break, we are going to review Lost Verizon. We will be back. And we are back, and we just watched an episode from the HD era. This was Season 20, Episode 2, Lost Verizon. First released in October of 2008, it was directed by Raymond S. Percy, written by John Frink. In this episode, Bart wants a cell phone and gets one accidentally from Dennis Leary and causes a bunch of pranks, and then Marge installs a tracking chip or something into the phone and starts monitoring Bart, and a bunch of other shit happens. Hey guys, what do we think?
This is everything I hate about The Simpsons, this episode. It's just like the bad Simpsons. Like, I don't know where to begin. Just so fucking convoluted as a plot. Like, not even convoluted, just like, it felt like one of those stories where you like write a sentence and then pass it to the next person to write another sentence. Like, it started here and I don't think I've ever seen anything date an episode more than the fact Dennis Leary was the big star. I was like, what?
Everything you were saying before about the Stellan Skarsgård appearance, and it was just so much more egregious in this one.
Yeah. And
Bart and Milhouse maybe would know Dennis Leary in season 4 Simpsons, not fucking season 20. Like, he's so past his prime.
And he was never even he was never a big, they were like, he's a big movie star. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And you can forget all that if there was a lot of funniness in there. But I just think that, like, I've got so many things that I didn't like about it. But in general, I just think it just embodied that era of The Simpsons where the story just kept pivoting, and it was almost like Family Guy-esque, where it's like, let's just write a stupid joke, but not do it well, at least. And it was frustrating, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It was like, the story, like sentence by sentence story, makes total sense because it did feel just slapped together. It didn't feel coherent. The jokes were stupid. There were so many, like, just things that make no sense in any context, that don't add anything. Like I know that there's like that nudge, nudge, wink, wink, Mo and has a crush on Marge, but to have him like stalking her and then the FBI watching in on him, like, it was just dumb.
Yeah.
I thought that could have worked if it had gone one further.
Yeah, I thought
like there needed to be someone watching the FBI to just push that over the edge.
And that would have been the joke, right? Like, the FBI watching Mo wasn't a joke. That was like the setup to the third level of it, which would have been,
Monkeys in Space or something.
Yeah, exactly. Something. Whatever it would be. And, it just, there was a few moments like that was just, it was like wackiness and then no payoff. It's like one or the other,
I'm gonna be controversial here.
You loved it.
I liked all the Dennis Leary stuff. Because,
I'm not saying I didn't like. I just thought it was weird. It was just weird. I don't hate Dennis Leary. I just think he was projected as like a movie star, like a big name, like with an agent, and he's doing films. And like he hasn't. It just seemed. It seemed weird, like, to put him there.
I guess then a bit of context. So like I don't mind Dennis Leary, and I like a lot of his projects. Like I was a big fan of The Job, and I was a big fan of like the early seasons of Rescue Me, which would have been around this time, plus with the Ice Age stuff. But I thought they were doing that on purpose. Like they were making him seem like they were acknowledging the fact that he's not a big star, and like they were hitting it pretty hard. I thought if they weren't, then they completely failed at what they were trying to do.
Generous.
But like the fact that they portrayed him as kind of like a jealous guy, and then like focusing on like his stuntmen getting credit for stuff that they do instead of him, and then just like the ridiculous stuff that he'll say yes to anything. Like I thought all that stuff was pretty funny. What I thought was weird was how poorly it fit in with the main plot of the episode, which seemed to be just kind of a poor retread of Marge Be Not Proud, where, I mean, it's probably been done a million times since, where one of them loses trust in the other one, and at the end there's a little sweet thing that gets it back to status quo. And if they wanted that to be the plot, they could have definitely put in some more of that heart we talk about instead of all the random Dennis Leary, Brian Grazer stuff.
Yeah, so those were our two guest stars for this episode. Yep, playing themselves.
But I mean, look, if that's the case, Jamie, but I think then I certainly don't think it was obvious they were doing that. Like, if that's the case, it makes it. But I think then they failed to drive that home at all because, again, you can't do satire about someone pretending to be a big shot at a moment in time that might make sense 10 years ago, and then like 3 years later, everyone's like, was he a big shot or was he a loser by
I agree
then?
with that.
You know, like I don't even know if that's correct. I certainly think like that makes it less bizarre. But like, I mean, he was in Ice Age, but then they're making out he's you know what it seemed like? It seemed like they wrote it for an actor, and then that actor pulled out, and then they put in, well, they got Dennis Leary, and then like something like that. Like that would be the other option. One thing is they've misfired, like Jamie's saying, they've misfired with the satire about he's not actually a big star. The other thing, it seemed like it was written for a bigger star, and then obviously that fell through.
I think because I wrote a note saying like they kind of poke fun at it, and that's where I think they failed. Is it like that would make so much sense if it was written for someone else, because it seemed like they wedged Dennis Leary in and just had to kind of like oh, fuck, we'll make a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But it was only like once or twice where they kind of lent into that, I felt like. I don't know.
Yeah, like with Bart's line, what show was that from? The one that's cancelled or the one that's going to get cancelled?
Yeah.
That was like, the one bit of self-deprecation that I sort of found in that,
True, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, leading into all this, how was the wackiness of this episode? Was it a particularly cartoony one?
That was what I've underlined twice. I was like, wacky and just so unnecessary. Like Marge in the coffin, when he's coming up and he's like, there was just so many things that, again, I don't care if it's wacky or not, but just missed opportunities for jokes or just silly. And it was quite jarring compared to, when you asked the question about the last episode, I had to think about it and I wasn't really sure where to place it on the scale of wackiness. But now, in contrast, the last episode was not wacky at all compared to this. Like this was just just on steroids. And I don't know if this was like the period of time where I think they were, Family Guy was sort of being popular, and then they were like, oh, maybe we do that, The guy's fighting a chicken, everyone loves that. So it seemed like it was a little bit over the top, but it's, very different and very wacky.
Yeah.
Ending on Maggie is still at Machu Picchu, like, oh, come on. I was livid.
Just Marge and I mean, the heart thing that you said, Jamie, was so true because it's like, it just made no sense why they're like running around the country, driving to Peru or to fucking find Bart. And then at no point did you ever feel like she was like, I've lost my... There was no like weight to that. Like if you actually felt like she was chasing him and trying to find him because he was lost. But no, it was just... And then it was like... Bart did the whole thing where he's like, it's like it was a Home Alone thing, right? Like Kevin, and then Kevin's home alone, and then when his mum comes home, he hugs her, and oh my God, I can't believe I missed you, and when all I wanted was to be alone, and there was just him being stupid at home. What was he, grilling licorice or something? Like they missed an opportunity to make that pay off, even if that was the point.
Doing that dumb joke of him doing all the things that Marge would obviously want him to do when he's he's like, oh, I'm going to have a bath, then I'm going to eat my vegetables. Yeah. It was so fucking lame.
Yeah, like the act break, the other one as well, where he gets the phone and it's like, oh my God, you can use these to watch commercials, and then shows right up to
Christ, almost threw the laptop out the window.
Modern Simpsons, potentially damaging to your property.
Yeah. Oh, and the other one that really just shat me off was when they're all calling each other about, or Milhouse is calling everyone about Principal Skinner fighting on the freeway, and it cuts to Jimbo, and he's got that shirt that says "I love puppies," and that's the lamest possible joke for an out of character Jimbo thing. Like just cringe, just
what
total
about when
cringe.
Dennis Leary dived for the Pop-Tarts? Did you see that?
Yeah.
It was just, what is he? Are they just...
It's a reference to one of his popular movies.
Are they just like, we got another 20 seconds to pad, like, what do we do here? We need to pad this out. So many moments like that. I just stopped writing them down because they just... Skinner with a Viagra. Oh, what's in my coffee? And he's walking straight. Like, what is that?
Yeah, give him a fucking big old honking
Give him a
bone
bone
rock.
or have him like just sitting behind his desk like, I'm not standing up. Like that joke. Like that's an easy joke. You don't have to show him with a boner. Just show him obviously having a boner.
Yeah, show the whole thing.
What a Chekhov's gun thing, He has a bone. He's Viagra and he's walking stiff. Man. There was so many moments like that was like, if you're going to be silly and throw away, at least nail it. And that is just such a mess.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially the wackiness at the start, setting the whole thing up with, Skinner crossing the freeway and Barney getting involved, and then apparently he runs off with Agnes as well. It's, I generally didn't know what to make of it. I was just sort of staring blank-eyed and didn't blink a lot in this episode.
And honestly, I thought, because the very first joke in it, or one of the very first jokes is actually pretty decent, where Agnes says to Skinner, he's like, oh, I put $1 in, but only drove 90 cents. And she said, oh, yeah, you had to drive with the windows down, didn't you, Rockefeller? And I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. Maybe and then he's getting chased around. And
And she had the book Bingo Strategies Guide and it says it's all luck. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. There was some little things like that. I'm like, 1, 2, I'm like, okay, this is all right. And then I think that were the first and only two things that I thought were okay jokes the whole episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, a weird connection with the last episode we were talking about, Jamie talking about how weird it is seeing Simpsons with modern technology. Then when you get a certain time away from that, because, this episode's 13 years old now, and them with flip phones is, somehow weirder than them with iPhones now.
Yeah, assigning ringtones for your friends. I was like, oh boy, this is age bad. Like, that's just a thing no one's gonna get apart from people our specific age, maybe. Like, there's not a timeless quality to it that many of Simpsons' best references or gags
And they didn't
have.
even do it, right? They just said, I'm going to assign a thing.
Yeah, they just said it.
There was no joke. It was just a reference.
Yeah. But we did get a re-emergence of the old Bart calls up the bar with a prank call gag.
Which, again.
Loved them.
Yeah, Jamie
loved
it.
Loved all three of them.
I mean, I didn't like the whole
Drew
let's
P.
go to
Wiener?
Australia, let's go to Sweden. I guess it's how else do you do it apart from that? It seemed a little corny, but it's like
sign gags as well. I didn't mind. Crocodile Drunkies, and what was the other one? Ingmar Barman or something.
Ingmar
okay.
Beer Man was funny, and
There's
just the way
certainly
the way the Swedish person talked in general, like an Ingmar Bergman character, was funny. I thought. Also, the pin for the Crocodile Drunkies is Fox Studios, apparently.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say what annoyed me about that and is kind of emblematic of the entire episode is that it clearly zoomed in on what I assumed was the South Coast and now know is Sydney, but it's still on the coast. And then it goes to the outback. And if that's the purpose of their gag, that has potential for something, but it's never clear. It's like, do you know that that's not where the outback is? Like, it's just either do it right up or don't do it at all.
No, they don't care.
I don't think they were aiming for landing on Coogee Beach and having it say Bondi, and then people being like, I don't know about that one. I think that's what American writers think Australia it probably is.
Yeah.
They're doing Queanbeyan.
Yeah. Says ACT, that's wrong.
But I mean, how was the heart in this episode? I think we kind of covered it already, but
Big whiff, I reckon.
Real missed. Like Jamie said, I think it was more jarring because it seemed like the plot needed that at the end, and it just didn't have it at all, or at least they were trying for it. It's fine if there's no heart if they're not trying for it, but it's like if the plot needs something like that and it's missing, it's even worse.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating because the idea is sound. Like, break trust by spying on someone, get revenge, realize that you need them. It's a weird not newer because it's more than 10 years old, but it's a weird, that era Simpsons thing of wasting so much time up top that the resolution feels extremely rushed.
Yeah.
There's so much shit with Leary. I mean, I guess they go, pretty close at the start that they can't afford the cell phone and whatnot, but there's no conflict there until maybe more than halfway through the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's totally lacking from the Lisa angle of it as well, because, she's just intentionally misdirected her parents for a, what'd she say, 3,700-mile round trip to Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And, Lisa never gets caught in this. She has no guilt over it. She got a gnarly trip to Peru, and no one really cares that Bart was alone for 2 weeks.
No, there's no guilt or anything like that. And I tell you what, speaking of dated, what about the fucking unwoke colonial invasion thing where they're like the Incas were just wussies and that's why they ran away when the conquistadors turned up? I was just like, what? Yeah. That's your take? They ran away scared. That was just such a weird thing to throw in there as part of the plot.
Well, and that's what made fucking just summarizing this thing up the top so difficult. I'm like, well, what is this episode about? And it's it's saying, and then. And that it arrives to this spot where it fucking ends up that, Maggie's the queen of Peru now?
I mean,
so weird.
Why not? If you get to that, I think that at the end they're like, all right, well, nothing's wackier than what we've just done there, let's just end it on the wackiest note. That's a problem when you start doing that.
Did it imply, I can't remember who she was lording it over at the end there, but people don't live at Machu Picchu anymore, it's ruined. Did she just lording over the tourists.
Yeah, it seemed really like it was just they really didn't understand what's going on. Like the people down there are still like from the 1200s, you know, like they just didn't really get. The writers were. It was a big miss. They certainly, I don't think they would get out of a writer's room today.
Well, I mean, yeah, it also showed that they didn't have trust in their own emotion in the episode as well, because they had, like, it wasn't earned, but it was kind of nice seeing Bart wrap himself around Marge's leg, but they just couldn't let that moment sit. Like, they had to then go then, and then this bullshit, okay, credits.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it wasn't earned. You're totally right. Because they were like, there's no heart the entire episode, and then we're going to tack something on at the end.
Yeah. Well, much like with the earlier montage with Marge tracking Bart, like the whole daytime's awesome, nighttime's scary. Like, those are all the moments that they're kind of rushing with this story in the form of montage, which, makes it doesn't feel like it's important at all.
No.
Both the montages were not funny either, which, like, if you're going to do them, pack some gags in them. Like, the tracking of Bart was kind of like a non-event, like the silly coffin joke, the adult movie joke, and then, like, the scary nighttime versus fun daytime things was some golf with some severed dolls' heads. Like, I get that it's maybe stuff that a 10-year-old boy would do, but, like, for wasting 30 seconds, and I guess tens of thousands of dollars to license an Elvis Costello song, like,
Yep.
like it would be great if those sections were funny, and neither of them were.
I would have loved like I said, like a Home Alone parody or a Risky Business or something that Bart's Home Alone. Let's fucking shaving. I know that's a fucking hacky thing, but it just something so we understand what's going on. And if you're not going to do jokes, at least sort of do some sort of like montage like that we can relate to, not just make up your own weird, stupid line about daytime.
There's a lot of kind of Alex has got the nail that there's a lot of people just saying shit and us having to accept it. Like when he says like daytime great, nighttime bad, like there's no real indication that anything that happens at night is bad other than the fact that he's saying it. Milhouse has a moment as well where he just kind of like, you don't see his parents like over mother him and smother him with attention. He like outright states it. So there's a lot of wasted time here saying things instead of making jokes or showing things.
And you're right.
Absolutely.
And if you get rid of the Leary part and you just go, okay, tracking, Chip, running away, like you could get into that and then you've got time to flesh it all out. And that just seemed like they were sort of behind the eight ball from the start, is to try to wrap this up in a certain amount of time. Oh, well, we can't elaborate and we just have to have Milhouse going, my parents love me, bye, and that's it.
Did Milhouse sound weird in that episode as well?
A little bit. When he did that line, he did.
That whole part where he was talking about his parents loving him, I thought maybe they had someone else in for it, but I couldn't find any evidence of it.
It was a black guy from Becca, I think.
There he is.
But ultimately, did it feel like an episode of The Simpsons? Are these the characters we know and love? Is this the show we know and love?
No way.
Not in the old. It definitely felt like it was a highlight reel of what I think of when I think of Bad Simpsons. Like it would hit every note in terms of that. So in that way, yes, but I don't think there was any redeeming part of it that I was like, this is a glimmer of old Simpsons. No.
Yeah, I mean, I concur. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah, even with that, there's not even the, hey, it's not as good as seasons 3 to 9, but it's still better than 90% of other sitcoms. It's like, no, it's fucking not. Like, I could watch laugh track sitcoms that are funnier than that, like.
Yeah.
And wasn't sorry, but I haven't caught up. But didn't Barney get sober? And wasn't he sober at one point, or is that done? Is that not canon anymore?
Well, much like Milhouse's parents who got back together in like season 19. Yeah, Barney got back on the sauce in like 16 or 17 or something.
Okay,
never quit, brother.
But all this stuff makes the next question so exciting. What would you like to change? Jamie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I either take out Dennis Leary or make the whole episode about Dennis Leary.
They should say Dennis Leary so much more.
Just screen an episode of The Job. It was pretty funny, and not enough people watched it, I reckon. I don't know, like, if you're gonna do the tried and true plot of mom and son disappointment, like that is such a well-worn thing that you've really got to hit it hard instead of just lightly brush over it. You got to spend more time on that. I think, the characters acted. There's a lot of it that plays like fan fiction, like someone who has written a Simpsons episode because they watched like 15 of them in a row. I'd maybe just fucking bin that one and just come up with a new one.
Total teardown. How about you, Alex? What would you like to change?
I think if you're gonna, and I don't think there's a problem doing just the back end of it and stretching that out. But if you do that, I think they've got to like almost like the podcast one was. Like make it more about the cell phone and like now it's not about a cell phone, it's about a GPS tracker, right? Like it's not really like if you're going to make it about a modern thing and a modern phenomenon, I think it's got to be like the through line through it, and you can still have that through line about your parents spying on you, but make that the thing, you're spying on Bart and now you're watching him on the computer and you want like something along those lines where it's more consistent and not just this sort of way to get into him putting it on a bird and sending him to Peru. And then just the way it wraps up was just stupid. Like, there's got to be a better way to do that. I'm sure that there's a million different ways to end it. But, yeah, so I think you got to sort of just have the plot established within, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and that effectively still be the plot at the end, or at least, like, some sort of tenuous link to it.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Joe?
I reckon cut Leary, cut most of the golf an adult man firing a pistol at Bart, like that's,
It's as bad as Mo throwing a brick at Marge. Yeah Maybe worse.
Cut Machu Picchu at the end. You want Bart to go missing in the way that he went missing in the Thanksgiving episode, like keep him local, and then you can actually have some stakes. Maybe the family actually seem like they're concerned. I think the sillier you go, then the more you can't, like, it would be equally as ridiculous for them to be concerned while they're fucking hiking up Machu Picchu and they've been gone on a week and a half. So I think you just need to bring the whole thing closer to home and probably start with him having a cell phone. Like, the problem should come from him being on the cell phone too much or something like that, not wasting all this time setting it up so he can bring Dennis Leary in so he can steal his phone and call those gay Swedes.
Anyone who hasn't watched just thinks Drew's.
Weird right turn for Drew there.
Yeah, nothing wrong with the Swedish, Drew, but sure.
Well, I actually didn't mind the golf course stuff, and I think I just maybe had a little bit of affection to it because this is something I did as a kid. There was a driving range near my home, and we'd go get the balls that had gone over the fence from them, went into the creek and whatever, and give them back to the thing. And then they knew we were sneaking in at night and like getting the ones that were still inside the border. Like they found us out. So
we had a driving range near us, and we used to do the same thing. We just go down at night and steal them all. So that was a bit, but it's just, where do you place that in the show?
You never had a Texan shoot his two fucking pistols at him.
And also, Bart nearly gets hit by a ball flying, and then he goes up there, and Julius Hibbert's there, and he says it was his ball, and Hibbert is putting. And I'm like, no, he was not putting. That he must have been driving. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I nearly turned it off. That was our laptop out the window like Drew. I was just like, sorry, what is this? Anyway.
But yeah, I was sort of hoping there'd be a bit more like Bart's ownership of the cell phone and like Marge spying in, but like having conflict is like, well, this is mine. What right do you have, parent? There'd be some interesting conflict maybe, but not present at the moment.
I think your son or your child or whatever having a phone is a big parental thing that you could play so much on, texting and whatever. I mean, maybe they've done that in other episodes. I don't know, but just that whole thing about your son or your kid constantly on their phone, like there's a lot more to dive into or mine into if you're gonna have a new phenomenon thing as the plot. Like, it's not like it's thin. There's a lot more to tap into.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are here. Does anyone have any other notes, Jamie?
That was genuinely fascinating to do those two specific episodes, both about technology, both newer era Simpsons, and have the newest one shit all over the older one. Like the new that. I mean, I'm not going to, but it kind of makes me want to watch both season 32 and 20 and see if it stays the course the whole thing. Because if that is the case, then it's clearly like picked itself back up. I thought that the season 32 one had a playfulness and respect for its past, that this one had more of a sneering, like, can you believe we're still doing this shit kind of feeling. So yeah, I mean, it's a bad episode, but it's great to contrast it with an even newer one that was kind of similar, but just like better executed on every level. I tell you what, it makes me glad I gave that one a silver.
True.
Did you have any more notes, Drew?
That would, like, it was fucking terrible. And am I right to think that there was some controversy in Al Jean specifically coming back and everyone thinking it was going to be good? It was like him and Mike Reese or someone?
Yeah, they come back in season 13 and Al's been the showrunner ever since.
And like, that's just an indictment on Al Jean. Like, that makes me suspicious of any work he'd done in the earlier seasons where it was actually good. And it's like, man, this was all Swartzwelder or something.
I don't know, man. We've been comics for 8 years. Haven't you felt us getting less funny from like year 3?
Yeah.
No comment.
I can't think of anything funny to say, so yes.
But yeah, other than that, it was good to see the full title sequence back. I like that.
Yeah.
That was something that threw me on the first one.
Yeah, well, this was actually one of the last episodes that featured the full old 4.3 title sequence.
Yeah, I was going to say it was original animation, which kind of made it slightly jarring when it went to the newest, kind of animation.
Yeah, it was about halfway through season 20 when they started doing the new HD intro, yeah.
Right.
Alex, do you have any other notes?
Yeah, I think, what Jamie said was really struck for me, because when we started this, I thought going into the last one, I'm like, this will be shit. And then when I liked it, I had this thing where I'm like, maybe I've just seen the odd bad new one and just written it off, right? And so I thought I genuinely then thought going to this one that it would be okay. And then it was just everything I remembered about why I hated The Simpsons. So it was really like, I think if it'd done it in reverse, it would have been a really different experience, But just like, I would really like to see, like Jamie said, I think like a contrast to the episodes around this. Is it just a one-off? Is it the writers? Is it not? Everybody poops like that. That was so Family Guy to me, but not even funny. Just a reference to what if they did a film remake of this thing, and it just made me think about like being someone like Dennis Leary, and like especially then. What is this? 2008. So I think Simpsons definitely had run its course, but I think if you're a celebrity and someone said you want to guest star on The Simpsons, you're not going to say no. It's still quite probably a big dream of a lot of people. But then you're reading the script and you're like, oh, that's what I'm doing? Like how disheartening would that be? And you just almost want to be like, can we rewrite this? It was interesting to me to think about like being like one of those guest stars who has this shitty role and you're just forced to do it and just sort of being, oh, Dennis, you were on The Simpsons. No, I don't watch that episode. It was actually pretty shit, Like, you've got that's now your stigma around you, We're bagging him out because of the episode. So I thought that the whole guest star thing, I don't know what drives it, thinking about, like, is it because people watch because they like Dennis Leary? Is it just a cheap trick that the writers do to flesh out some jokes? But they seem to go for it all the time, and I don't know who really gets anything out of it, especially
if I was Dennis Leary,
like
I'd probably take the episode to get a few more things on my list of bad, on my bad pile, just to bury some of the shitty things he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it just made me really think about, like, what's the driving force behind these guest stars? Is it just the show feels like they need to do it, or So it was just interesting to think about that, and I'd love to know if someone like Dennis Leary reads that and goes, "This is going to be bad," This is not. I don't know why I signed up for this.
Yeah, well, even for this one, when it came out, it's probably the last sort of, TV era of The Simpsons before streaming. And, this would be where they do the commercials. And it's like, look, Dennis Leary's getting up to wackiness this week. He's jumping for Pop-Tarts and whatever.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's, you know, the tweets and Instagram posts and TikToks and stuff. It's like, look who we've got on this week. It's Lord, probably. I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess it must drive people to watch, and they just have to. So the writers are probably then forced to shoehorn someone in, and they hate it as much as anyone because it doesn't. Especially in this scenario. I mean, there's certainly been a lot of good cameos over the years.
Yeah, but most of them fall into the whole "what are you doing here?" sort of.
Well, exactly, and it might be frustrating to have to write around that, right? Like, so yeah, it's just something that caught my eye.
Yeah. And my only other note about this, and I just did want to give it credit because I thought this was a pretty good joke that referenced the past as well. It's like, Marge is like, but how did you get that cell phone? And it's like, the same way you got me, by accident, on a golf course. I'm like, okay, swish. Nicely done. All right, time to rank this thing. So, Drew, you can go first this time.
Oh, mate, F for failure all day.
All right. Alex.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of failure if you don't give this a failure? You know, like, what are we saying? Like, unless the episode doesn't download properly, like, I don't understand how it could fail more than that. Like, realistically, unless I watched everyone, I'd be surprised. I'd be very surprised if I watched every episode of The Simpsons and thought 10 were worse than that. So I'm gonna have to put it in the bucket of F.
Yeah, I'm going participant, and it's like only just. And it's like, because I feel like I've seen a lot worse that have made me a lot angrier. This was more of an exhausting, boring watch.
Yeah.
It's just like 5 minutes to go with the plot, and it's still pivoting. And it's just, are we here? Are we there yet?
Yeah.
Like, what do you reckon, Jamie?
Yeah, I got to do failure as well, I think. I like to positive, but I mean, that wasn't good.
You've upset Jamie now.
Now,
So sad.
now I need to go to sleep.
Oh. But we've got a really good one coming up next, I swear it.
Oh, man, imagine if we'd done them the other way around. I'd be so mad right now.
Well, we used to. For the first 20 podcasts, we did it, the other way around, and we had to change. It was just too much of a fucking bummer. Like... All right, and this will be a shiny failure, and it'll be the second episode from season 20 to get a shiny failure. It'll join How the Test Was Won. And yeah, if you did want to check out other episodes around this time that are good or bad, why not go to thesimpsonsindex.com and check out our spreadsheet. All right, but we have one more episode to do tonight. I am so excited to do this one. We are doing Marge versus the Monorail. We will be back. And we are back, and we just watched our classic and final episode for the evening. This was Season 4, Episode 12, Marge vs. the Monorail. First released in January of 1993, it was directed by Rich Moore, written by Conan O'Brien and Al Jean. In this episode, like, come on, you know it. It's the Monorail one. It says it in the title. You know what it is. I know it. You know it. Guys, what'd you think?
I hated it.
Failure.
It needs more Dennis Leary.
Yeah. Oh my God, where's the Lear dog? No, I mean, yeah, just such a great episode.
It's such a contrast to the last one because they're both similarly wacky, and the story kind of starts in a bit of a weird place and takes it in, off in a strange direction. Wackiness through the roof, but that's showing you how to actually do it right. It's actually fucking hilarious.
Yeah. That's what I thought watching it was. There were a lot of jokes that were like, just throwaway jokes, but there were so many of them, but they were all so funny, and it's like you can do whatever you want if it's funny, right? Yeah. And it wasn't like it was a wacky plot. I mean, it sort of is a bit unrealistic, but it's not. Like Drew said, it's a few little hops before you get into it. But once you're in, then it's the Monorail one. Like, it's not like halfway through, the Monorail crashes and they take Langley to court and then they sue and they're on TV for suing him. Like, it's sort of, once it starts, and then that is the storyline. And right at the very end, there's no weird wrap-up or anything. Like, it is much more clear and cohesive. But still, there's so many little jokes they hang off on it that just was killing me still. I've seen it 100 times and still laughing.
Yeah, that's it, right? Like, for the amount of times that I've revisited this episode, I'm surprised at the, amount of the times that I was still popping watching it. Like, it's just full of such good shit.
Yeah.
I was writing down jokes that I liked, and I had to stop because I was, getting a wrist cramp. And there's probably 4 or 5 jokes that I've at one point been at the pub and said as my all-time favorite Simpsons joke, and they're all crammed in this one episode. Like, I forgot how many of the classic jokes are in here.
Yeah, for the lexicon of Simpsons fans, this episode holds so many of those moments.
It's actually got a lot of jokes that I will throw out as a reference, like as a like the think harder, Homer, like that line. I use that all the time when someone's just as a joke of someone who's looking at someone and thinking it's something else. And the other one was and I think I said at the start, like, my girlfriend didn't watch a lot of Simpsons, so I'll say these things and she'll be like, what are you talking about? But the other one was, there ain't no monorail and there never was. Like, whenever there's something like, it's not even like, that's my favorite joke. It's like, that's a quote I'll use as a reference to a scenario. And there's a bunch more like that. Like, it's actually funny how just that one episode has influenced so much of your own lexicon.
Yeah, I think that Alex has pretty much said it completely right there. There's just so much from this that's entered everyday speech patterns. If you're late for something, I shouldn't have stopped for that haircut. Like anyone want to switch seats?
That is my favorite joke probably ever. I think
it's
that
as close to perfect as a half-hour television comedy can be, and the only thing that there's no mark down on it. The only thing that's crazy is that there's probably about 3 or 4 more seasons of The Simpsons that are this level consistency, which is insane. Yeah. It's so lucky to have this sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, so few shows you can say, they were really peaking between seasons 4 and 7. Like, now that is such a weird thing. It's generally, you like the first season and everything else.
Oh, just on the nerd off on that haircut thing, and just the subtlety of his actual haircut is just it's just so funny because it's just sort of short and cool. I was just looking at it then, and it's one of those things that, even if you remember that joke, when you see his shaved little sideburns and everything, it just kills you. And that's one of those, you don't need to over-egg it. You just go, there you go. He doesn't need a fucking mohawk or anything. It's just little subtleties like that are just only in that era.
It's the perfect subtle joke because a newer Simpsons would have done something stupid like a Family Guy style cutaway, but the subtlety of the joke is it puts the image of Marge sitting there looking at a watch while she's waiting for this guy to get a haircut.
There's
so
too much
funny.
Family Guy hate in this episode.
I think I was going to say that is, and I think South Park as well it's more just they have their own style and then they became popular, and then it's whether it was conscious or not. I think The Simpsons at some point, whenever they get too close to those two shows, I don't like it. And it's not that I really like those two shows, but if they're too throwaway gag line or they're too what's in the news, let's do an episode about it satire, I don't like it. And because those shows do it way better. So Family Guy's fine if it's hilarious if that's it is. But watching this episode, and I did read something about it, at the time this was considered, a lot of people didn't like this episode, or the voice actors didn't like it at all because it was so wacky compared to what was before it. But
even Yardley Smith said on a commentary that she thought this was the end of the show, and she's since walked back on it a bit. But even at the time, it was pretty far out there for The Simpsons. Yeah,
which is funny, and it just puts in context. I remember when my parents were like, that Bart is so rude, and it's and then it's South Park and all the rest of it just became this other thing. So it is funny that compared to what was before it was out there, but at no point did this episode need reining in. It was as funny as it was because it was a little bit wacky or whatever the case.
It is noticeably wackier than, Simpsons of that era, which stuck out to me because I forgot just how silly it is and how much stupid stuff. Even Homer sliding down it through the window at the start, totaling his car. It's a perfect opener, but it is noticeably self-consciously wacky as opposed to this The Simpsons being a cartoon that's actually one of the sort of 80s sitcoms that they're all about realism and
Monty Burns putting nuclear waste drums in the tree.
and the tree like coming alive.
All those bald children, like it's so
Well, that's
funny.
another one of those jokes where you imagine the scenario. You know, they don't then cut away to the bald children who, it's like the same with Chief Wiggum and Quimby having that standoff and then just cutely going, should we share a car or should I follow you?
Yeah.
You know, you don't then see that scene. You like, you're left to your imagination with that.
Yeah. I also really liked, like, I thought I had a couple of lines. There's a couple of really good Quimby lines. Like, he's got a few great moments in this, and actually, like, there's a few other characters that, like, I'm sure if you went back, this is what it was back then, but compared to the newer ones, there was just more secondary characters that had a good joke in there and had their own little character, like Quimby and Wiggum and stuff like that, and, like, you know, Abe getting everyone mistaken Abe when he's like against the monorail, like, and he's like, sure, we can pull our eggs in one basket. Like, there was so many great little lines like that from characters, some secondary characters that, like I said, I'm sure that was just like, you know, the norm of the course back in the season, whatever 4 it was, but it was refreshing, definitely.
Compared to season 20 especially, it is so dense with jokes. Like, they don't even want to go... Like, this episode specifically, I know there are ones in season 4 that are a little less, but that's usually because they are actually pushing the heart and doing it well. But this is such a joke. Like, you can't go 30 seconds without a joke. And I think they've said on the commentaries, like on the Simpsons scripts, you needed to have, like, a certain amount of jokes per page. So it's like... It's either gone downhill or they think what they're doing is of a similar quality. But this is, like... The amount of laugh lines and quotable things in here that come out of it, there were long stretches in the season 20 episode where like you'd kill for a snrub or something.
Yeah.
You know?
and it was edited so tightly as well. I just love how, like, you know, these like, you know, Mr. Burns, EPA, and then like the next thing is like Monty Burns up as Hannibal Lecter at the trial. Like, there's no bullshit. It's just like cut straight to the next scene, and that makes it so funny. There's no like padding of time, and it's like that. If you want to do not even that complicated, but if you want to do a storyline that's got a few beats, just having it tightly like that is so funny. And even like when Monty shoots as Snrub shoots for the ceiling with the and then as he's zipping up, Apu stands up in the foreground and starts talking, and he's going up behind him, and it's like they've just saved 7 seconds of dead air, but you don't lose what's happening, and it's just so tight that you just really appreciate it, and it means that the jokes are so quick without like seeming jarring, because you're not like, what's going on? You're following along the whole time.
Yeah, just whips along at 180 miles per hour with no fucking brakes.
Yeah, exactly.
So this episode as well, I think, has a little bit of a special meaning to us Sydney-siders as well. With the Sydney Monorail, and I did a little bit of Community Noticeboard-esque research on the Monorail today, and you wouldn't mind indulging me for a moment.
Of course.
We had our monorail opened in July of 1988, and there was a huge push against the monorail from Sydney Council as well, because they were pushing for, funnily enough, a light rail system that was going to cost $20 million as opposed to the monorail's $50 million. And tickets would be cheaper and all that. But they went ahead because TNT, the private firm that built them, you know, the selling points was it'd be a big tourist attraction and make the city look really futuristic and cool. And the monorails would be driverless. But during the first 3 months of operation, they had 9 breakdowns.
Damn, you seldom break.
So, I mean, I do wonder, like, is this just common for monorails across the world, or did they know about our stories or whatever?
That's interesting, because I never thought about the timeline of the monorail versus this episode, but imagine being the guy who's like pushing for because the monorail was around until way after this episode, right? Like, I can't remember when they finally killed it, but so there was a moment where this episode came out just ragging on stupid monorails, and you know, monorail headquarters in Sydney would have been.
I loved the monorail. I remember coming to Sydney as a kid and riding on the monorail, and I was young enough that it was like, I may as well have been at Wonderland, you know. I was having a great time.
So I don't know about you, Elliot, but I didn't grow up in Sydney, so we came to Sydney and then rode the monorail. Like, this is great, but like what I understood since is the criticism, and it makes sense when you think about it, is it just went nowhere from a Sydney sider point of view. From a tourist point of view, it was like, oh, the casino town, like wherever it went, it sort of was like, that's where you want to go. But it was completely pointless from anyone who lived here.
Well, I mean, it connected so poorly up with the rest of the transport infrastructure, and I think, yeah, that was another big criticism.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the breakdowns and incidences, yeah, like a month after they opened, the monorail stopped for 2 hours, and it was found out that the company who owned it, TNT, didn't call emergency services until like 1 hour and 50 minutes, and in which the fire brigade then came and, yeah, were able to disembark the passengers. But yeah, they tried to keep it hush-hush and hope it would kick it in. But
Oh, no.
Hope no one would notice.
Kept rebooting the system. Give it another reboot.
You tried turning it off and turning it on again.
we're just hanging out for that solar eclipse.
Yeah.
The cosmic ballet.
And there's been a pile over the years, but one of the more recent ones in 2010, two of the monorail trains collided when one stopped and then the other just kept going and then rear-ended it.
Jesus Christ.
4 people were hospitalized, no serious injuries, so we can laugh at it.
Jeez. I didn't even know that. It's like, I thought it was one rail, one carrier. I don't know how you even crash it, but I guess if one moves and one doesn't, you're going to hit the other one. So,
Yeah, I didn't actually, because, yeah, that, like, I wondered how many monorails were operating on, but at least 2, I guess, based on that info, but I couldn't find out. But yeah, so over time, the monorail like jumped between so many private companies, but eventually was bought by New South Wales government in 2012 with the intention to demolish it, and the monorail took its last trip on June 30, 2013.
That's so much later than I thought. I thought it was like
Right?
early 2000s they got rid of it.
Same. That's
relatively recent.
Wow. So 93, did you say it started? No, 88. 88. Wow. That's such a long time. And I don't know if there's any monorails that are, apart from like at an airport when you're just shuttling around, I don't know if there's any monorails around the world that are actually sort of successful.
They have that, they have in Chicago, I think, and maybe in Philadelphia. They have
the L train.
L trains, but that's
it's a real.
They're a bit heavier. Yeah,
I feel like monorails kind of only exist in like theme parks with a theme of like Tomorrowland in the 50s now.
Yeah, that's such an 80s thing to be like, let's build something to make us futuristic and cool and just embarrassing themselves. It is so funny how
that travels on one track.
Yeah. It just like, I think, and it's such a funny word, monorail, like that mono means one, rail means rail. Like it is a perfect thing to make fun of, and it's so crazy that he just nailed. I don't know how Conan wrote this and whether it was based on a town that had a monorail or not, but like if he didn't, he just said towns would be that stupid. I mean, it's quite funny how much it aligns with reality, just the town just going, yeah, let's do it. You know?
Well, they're so like impractical and big and imposing because, it's not just the track. You've also got,
all those pillars.
Yeah, that are just getting in the way of shit. So, yeah, you can totally understand why, the government were like, let's just fucking cut our losses on this one and go back to the light rail.
Yeah, I bet you they pitched it going, Melbourne want a monorail. Well, we're twice as smart as the people from Melbourne.
Actually, what's funny is because the monorail and tracks itself were then divvied out, and Hobart put in a bid to buy some of the pieces, but they couldn't raise the funds. They wanted
God, that's even more.
Sydney
Monorail.
monorail.
Any more embarrassing going to the monorail auction and not getting your money together. That's very funny.
So Hobart ended up with the equivalent of the Simpsons elevator to nowhere, but it's still half a monorail track.
But 22 of the carriages were put on sale on Gumtree for $3,000 each.
Man.
Unfortunately, most of them went to scrap, but 2 of the characters and 10 meters of track are currently at the Powerhouse Museum. Cool. 2 other characters, I keep doing that. 2 other carriages are at Google's Piermont office and are being used as meeting rooms.
There you go.
Just to remind you what not to do. None of this.
But Google paid $250,000 to have them installed in those offices.
God damn it. That sucks. I hate that.
That's so iconic and weird and cool, quirky for Google. Yeah, good on them.
Yep. Finally, yeah, if you do want to see the Sydney Monorail, there's a lovely photo essay on monorails.org, and it also appears in the movies Two Hands, starring our Heath Ledger, and the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie.
What?
Where it was rebranded as the Angel Grove Monorail.
Oh, there you go.
Is that? Yeah,
No,
so
that's
that would be
fun,
the
dude.
one from the 90s, right? The Ivan Ooze one.
Yeah.
Yeah, haven't seen that in a hot minute, but now I know it's got that monorail in it.
But back to this episode. So yeah, we've dipped in and out of the wackiness a bit, but were there any other, some of the cartoony moments which stood out to you guys?
I really like Bart and Lisa's imagining what to do with the money. I thought that was like the perfect way to do a wacky cutaway. Like Bart imagining Seymour getting eaten by the giant ants. Bart, your mechanical ants. Like, that was just such a silly, like that's, because I really actually liked how, again, it was like all the characters had, the Simpsons had their own little moment in this episode. Obviously Homer, and then Bart looking up to Homer and having that, I really respect you now. And then also Lisa had that moment with where she asked that really clever question. He's like, then she just gets fooled by the charm of this guy, in saying only me and you would understand. And then Marge obviously being worried about Homer. But so there was like a couple little moments like that. So it sort of just went around and it was like a wackiness, but it was also like a character thing. Like it's wacky, but it's also like endearing to think of a child imagining what he would do with all that money and Lisa doing it. So I think that was like, definitely not wacky, but it was like the way to do that sort of cartoon, like you said, using the cartoon medium in the right way. And also just like as a little slight note about that, I really liked how Langley kept running everywhere with a suitcase with cash just coming out of it, like as if he wouldn't have just got EFT'd the money, but he's just running with money pulling it. Like, that's so funny and silly, and that's how you use like that cartoon medium way better than like whatever else, we were criticizing the other ones for.
I mean, Leonard Nimoy phases out.
I was about to say that.
Insanely funny. I mean, Drew mentioned it, but the first bit is a Simpsons, a Flintstones takeoff where he crashes through the front window of his car. That's incredible too.
This song as well became like a schoolyard chant for my school. Like, we just sing this all the time, and it's so funny. Why chestnut? And why was that the funniest tree to possibly get?
There is so much goodness in this. There's like, when they do the wacky stuff that has character behind it, that's amazing. But they've also managed to just do the complete non sequiturs and get away with it as well.
Also, what killed me more, probably harder because I couldn't remember, it was Truckosaurus, and the celebrity voice like Marlon Brando was Truckosaurus, and it was like celebrity voice impersonated. It's like, you crazy car. Like, that was so stupid. But it was just like, it just got me. It just tickled me so much.
There is so much pure wackiness, and like I think both of you said, just the throwaway jokes that are character based, but they're just such stupid things to say in the moment, but they're so funny. Like when just killed me when Marge gets up and she's like, now my idea might not be as exciting, and then Quimby just goes, well, you talk on, I'll amuse myself with some pornographic playing cards. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's coming into that imagination again. Like,
Yeah.
But how about the heart of this episode? How did we feel about the emotional core?
I think Alex got that pretty well in the head, where it's not an overtly heartish episode. This era of The Simpsons does heart very well when it wants to, but like all the characters act like the characters. And that's in service of the emotion and the story and the joke. So when Alex pointed out like that first, like Lisa wants to be pragmatic with this, but then she gets fooled by Lyle Lanley essentially saying like, you're the smartest person in the room, which is like something that would happen to an 8-year-old girl that probably thinks she's the smartest person in the room. Like any 8-year-old would be fooled by that. So I think like it's not like schmaltzy heart, and it's not like nakedly wearing its emotion, but I think in terms of like these people are acting how humans will act in the craziest scenario possible. Everyone's still doing the things that you expect them to do. Nobody's out of character or mean or weird for any reason. Every non sequitur is still in service of who they are.
Yeah. And that's what I really like, that like Marge gets involved because she's reading about the brochure and she's like, you're going to be going so fast. And then she invests, like, I need to look into this more. Like, what's driving her to be involved in the episode is the fact she's married to this guy, which is totally believable. And the heart of it, right? Like, there's no other incentives for her to track down this other guy and get involved. It's that core heart of my husband might be in danger. And then Bart being in the carriage with Homer the whole time is driven by him finally like, wow, Dad, you have a cool job. I respect you, which is pretty, sweet as well. So they don't like at all dwell on it, but it is like there is some moments there that like, I mean, you could have put Bart in there by like giving him a job, which it would have been weird, right? Like he's in there because he wants to hang out with his dad, which is quite sweet, and then it's believable, and then that drives some of the other jokes and the plot from it. So I think there was a lot of moments like that that's just missing in the later ones, but it's certainly not like the core of it here, but it really adds to it.
What I think is so crazy about this is that it kind of flies against like everyone's conventional theory as well. And like, it's probably regarded as one of the funniest episodes of the series. And it is a Marge episode. Like, it's called Marge versus the Monorail. And everyone associates Marge and like more Lisa episodes with the ones with a stronger emotional core. This one is just bad shit. But like, I know that the writers, I think in the commentaries have said they get a big kick out of when they can make Bart like believably into Homer in like a way where like there's a scene in a later episode where like Homer cracks a joke and Bart really laughs at it, and like we just like that because we like the idea that a 10-year-old boy will like his dad's shitty jokes. And like Alex said in this, the fact that like they could have made him like Mono Boy or something, but they chose to just have him be a guy who wants to hang out with his dad because he's a monorail conductor. I think there's your heart, I reckon. Like, it's subtle, but it's there in spades compared to the other episode we just watched.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so sweet. He's proud of his dad for showing some initiative, and thanks, boy.
Yeah. And then it's got that great joke about you want to be called Homer Jr., the kids can call you Hoju. I'll get
just
back to
the
it.
blank stare before that. Just
beautiful.
I mean, it's also got I call the big one Bitey in it as well.
Yeah.
And driving in Marge's concern as well, the Simpsons trope of this time doing, the floating heads, repeating the phrases and stuff.
Yeah.
I call the big one Bitey.
That's such a great joke.
But ultimately, did it feel like an episode of The Simpsons? Are these characters we know and love?
Absolutely. I think even like, hey, what about this? I mean, Nimoy is a guest star, but like Phil Hartman as Langley is like
perfect.
That's what you want. Like Leonard Nimoy that's a perfect cameo because he's himself and he's just this weird, crazy guy. But yeah, Phil Hartman doing that is like, it's such a great, slick character, and you don't need to get anyone else. You don't need to get a famous person. You just need to get someone who has a great, funny voice, and even though he's Lionel Hutz, who's on the monorail as well. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just such a great cameo to have that come through.
Yeah, I think that probably exemplifies something that is specific to like this golden age of The Simpsons versus later eras, where like Leonard Nimoy is just clearly someone they want on because all the writers were gigantic Star Trek nerds, as opposed to them being like, oh, we've got to get Miley Cyrus on because people love her and it drives up views. And like I also think that, I mean, it's been mentioned, but like losing Phil Hartman, such a tragedy, and probably has had just as big a impact on The Simpsons' perceived loss of quality as any other reason. Like, you've essentially lost like 3 of the show's best side characters with him, and the ability to just plug him in any role.
Yeah. Oh, because there is a bunch of one-time Phil Hartman characters, and man, he just was so good at doing this particular brand of sleazebag, which you just can't help but fucking smile and like writhe at the same time.
Yeah, the charming, cheap sleaze bag. There's something about it. Yeah, it's almost. Did they ever put Lionel Hutz or Troy McClure in again? Like they never tried, right? They never went for.
Oh no. No.
And you're just losing two great. I mean, the bumbling lawyer and the failed actor. Like it. Imagine like you said. Let's say from whenever he died, from that season onwards, how many jokes could you get in as him as one of those two characters in? I reckon every episode you get 2 laughs, you know? Like, if anything could be the catalyst or the jumping of the shark, that's got to be it. But, just really great to hear him. And, you're right, Jamie. Like, Leonard Nimoy didn't have a movie to promote, I imagine. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like it was iconic.
Yeah,
like,
I think if anything, at that point, he was probably, like, nearer the bottom of his relevance. Like, Star Trek original cast would have well and truly be done and dusted, and it would have been before nostalgia monster of the internet fucking made like all that shit super popular again.
Yeah. Well, they'd approached Shatner a couple of times throughout the run of the show up until this point, and he said no all the time. And this episode was originally meant to have George Takei, but he was like asking for a lot of script changes and stuff, and the writers were feeling stifled and annoyed. And then eventually Takei sent them almost said email, definitely didn't do that back in 93. Sent them a letter saying, I can't do this episode. I'm a spokesman for like a certain public transport group, and I don't feel like this would reflect well. It's so weird.
Dennis Leary, take note, you know?
Yeah. But no, it's amazing in this instance where Spock wasn't their first choice, but they didn't really go for him immediately because they didn't think they'd be able to get him, and that he was so up for the self-deprecating stuff and like being like trying to impose trivia on people who don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Just that, can anyone want to switch seats? Like, that's great. Like,
so funny.
Didn't I is also great, you know?
Yeah. But yes or no, would you watch this episode again?
I'll watch it right now again.
Yeah. Honestly.
And episodes that we want to watch again. We like to think about what playlist we'd put them in. So what do you think some other episodes of The Simpsons that would pair nicely with this one?
I'd like to watch it alongside, sorry, Jamie, I'd like to watch it alongside the other Conan episodes because I
Homer
don't
goes
think
to college.
I don't really know, like I know them when you think about them, but this is the one I always think of when I think of Conan. And it would be interesting for me to watch them back to back and try to pick apart his voice because I think Conan's hilarious and I think this episode's hilarious, but I don't really know what's Conan's voice like because it is so very similar to The Simpsons to me. So I don't know how much of it is just him being a hilarious guy and being funny through this other sort of medium of The Simpsons versus like, you know, I don't know what joke, I'm sure I could think of one if we talked about it, but like where could you go, that's a joke that only Conan episode would have. I don't really know.
Anything to do with the sea captain, like especially, you call that an anchor?
Yeah,
like,
right.
He's said aloud, like he loves that fucking character and like, you mentioned Homer Goes to College. The other episode I know he wrote was New Kid on the Block where Bart and Laura Powers he has the crush on the older girl, and the B story for that is Homer's all you can eat at the seafood restaurant, which prominently features the old sea captain.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be some, to be able to put things like that together. So to me, that would be my playlist. Just thinking about Conan, and because I think did he write any more? Was that the 3 or 4?
I think he had like some credits in Treehouse of Horror episodes, but he didn't do many. But he was on the staff from like seasons 3 to 5 or something. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Any other playlists?
Yeah, you've got to put it on a greatest episode of all time playlist. Like everyone puts that as like 1 or 2 usually. So like you've got to get that with Last Exit to Springfield, Cape Fear.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of season 4 episodes that could go on that list, but this is something as well that you'd put on a playlist of like if you're showing someone The Simpsons for the first time.
Yeah.
Like they watch this one, and if they don't like it, then you can be pretty safe being like, oh, you probably won't like this show.
Yeah. I definitely think it's probably one of my favorite, but I think the 4th season is my favorite season because of this and other ones. Like I think it helps sort of push that narrative for me. So I would love to just watch the 4th season and just sort of sit back and see was there something in the water that season, or was it just was it the writers at the time? Was it just who was driving the show? I don't know, but it's funny that there's so many. I know that it was still great up until season 12, but like I feel like for me, season 4 always pops out as the one that has the best episodes. So
that 4 to 6 run is fucking perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, on the other side of it, is there anything you'd like to change about this episode? Jamie?
Yeah, double the length. Just
This should have been the Simpsons movie.
make it longer, split it. Make an alternate universe where Conan still got to do Conan, but also had a long career writing for The Simpsons, and give us the best of both worlds.
Well, Conan's done the show. He's done with Late Night, right? Like, David X. Cohen's come back and written. Why can't Conan come back and write an episode?
Get him to sit in for a week.
Yeah.
How about you, Drew? Any changes you'd like to make?
Not a one. I'd keep it exactly as it is. I think it's a perfect Simpsons episode. When people ask what my favorite one is, I tend to go to this and Homer Goes to College a lot. I think I prefer Homer Goes to College, but like this one definitely is like bouncing around my top 3. It's so good.
What about you, Alex?
No, I think you'd just be meddling for the sake of it, I do think that, like, if every episode of The Simpsons was as wacky as this, that it probably would be a detriment at that era, right? Like, it's good that there are some ones that are a bit more centered. So I would just more broadly say this was, like, as funny as you can be in this style, and that I do think I think it's important to say that, like, not, ones that aren't a laugh every fucking beat, they're not a lesser episode just because of that. I think there's a trade-off there, which is, like, good. So in that mind, I think this is, it'd be crazy to say, oh, you should do this or you should do that. Make it a light rail, not a monorail. Like, no, I don't really think you're going to improve much. But, it is The Simpsons at its best. So
Yeah, well, I mean, talking about, like, season 4 generally, it was a bold new step for the show, because this is, like, around the time that Sam Simon left as well, and he was, like, the producer of the show that was really pushing, like, the emotional story, like, not the wacky stuff, and he left over sort of conflicts like this, and like, but yeah, this episode and so many others around this time are just like proof of the alchemy that just existed at this time. It's just this fucking one perfect run, and this one stands above. It says so much for it. So I'm not going to change anything. But we are here. Jamie, do you have any other notes about this episode?
I mean, not really. We could just sit here and quote it like annoying people in a pub, but everything that's been said about this episode has been said, I think. Like, it's very, very good television.
What about you, Drew?
One thing I noticed that, was a bit of a reality check, and it's something I reckon I've used this particular image in so many, like, group chat jokes. It's one of my favorites, but the image of the guy from 90210 coming out of the car, and it's like... He's playing a teenager, and the joke is that he's old. And whenever I say it, I always say, he's cool, he's sexy, he's 47 years old. And then when watching back, he's 34. And I was like, fuck, that's how old I
am. Damn.
Disney Plus must have changed it. No, you were all right. Yeah. How about you, Alex?
No, just, can Superman outrun the Flash? Like, that's just... kills me. I was writing down jokes that I'd forgotten, you know what I mean? Like, even the ones that I remembered, I was like, yeah, I remember this. But those ones, there's so many jokes there that you just get caught by jokes you forget. And I just think it was really refreshing that everyone got a laugh, everyone got a line. There was a lot of characters. I think Learning Lumpkin got a callback, or whatever her name was, Learning Lumpkin. Yeah, like Jamie said, we'd just be quoting stuff, and that would be great. But like, just go watch it, listen to this. It's just such a great app.
Yeah, I mean, because that's pretty much all my notes now is just quotes and stuff. But just bringing it to the point of that these aren't just throwaway gags. Marge talking about Main Street and the sort of cutaway jokes there with Homer and the snow tires and the fucking
the piano on his roof, like,
woo,
that's wacky, but that's so funny. Like that, like that's perfect. Yeah. What could Homer be carrying on his roof that would be ridiculous but hilarious? He's got a grand piano. Like, it's so stupid.
Yeah. And then the popcorn truck in the pothole, but. Like, and them coming out of the first act into the second act, Bart and Homer are still going, monorail, monorail. And they're clearly driving down Main Street because the whole car is shaking and bumping. Like, they made it like stick. It's so
Yeah.
satisfying.
And you should have written a catchy song like that guy. Like it's just yes, so funny.
And Mum would be upset if I didn't mention this, but yeah, her favorite joke in all of The Simpsons is the ring came off my pudding can.
Yeah. Use my penknife. Oh, good man. Yeah, that's such a catchy song.
Oh, yeah, we barely even talked about the song. What a good song.
It is.
It is
And
one of the
Homer,
best
Mono,
Simpsons songs.
you know, like
Yeah.
perfect stuff.
No, I spun this a lot when my Songs in the Key of Springfield CD back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that in North Haverbrook, the celebrity appearance was from Gallagher.
Yeah. There's so many things that, like, you know, because back in The Simpsons, they would make fun of things like Gallagher, and I only learnt about certain references through the lens of Simpsons saying they were lame, you know.
Yeah.
And Gallagher's one. Like, I don't think I knew. I would have watched that and be like, "Who's Gallagher?" And then finding out later, I'm like, "Oh, Simpsons thinks Gallagher's lame, so therefore it's." Gallagher is lame, you know, and
And as Gallagher just gets lamer and lamer as time goes on, this joke ages beautifully.
Yeah, exactly. It's not one of those. It's for whatever reason. It's just in the universe. It's in the sort of psyche that Gallagher is just like a lame thing. It's just still funny.
All right, well, it is time to rank this thing. Oh, wait, no, it isn't. We have one more important bit of business to go over before that. Jamie has already been asked this question, so I'll turn it to the other two. Drew, Alex. We are building a sandwich board on the Simpsons Index. So we ask you, if you could have a sandwich that is named after you, what would be on that sandwich?
Drew, go for it.
This is the hardest question I've asked them all night.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I'd probably just try and pass myself off as a sandwich that already exists, like a Reuben or something. You call it a Dreuben.
What makes the Dreuben special? What's your twist on it? Because actually, we've got a few people that have said Reubens for their sandwich. What's the Drew twist?
It can't riff. Don't ask it any question. You put it on the spot, it's gonna freeze up. Nah, it's just big, like me, like the man himself. Everything's bigger on my Reuben.
Yeah, I tell you what, 5'2" sandwich is a big sandwich.
I'll take it. How about you, Alex? What would you?
Man, I thought I'd stall for time by throwing a Drew, but I still have nothing. I don't know. I love a chicken schnitty sanger. I do love a chicken schnitty sandwich, bit of tomato, bit of Dijon mayo. What else can we throw on there? I don't know. I can't make a pun. I can't have a Dreuben. My nickname growing up was Whitebait, actually, and one of my other favourite shows, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry gets named after a sandwich, and it has whitefish, which is like whitebait on it. And I remember being like, and then he's upset because it's such a gross sandwich. So maybe that's what I got. It had capers as well. So I don't know. That would be my bad answer. I'm going to go with a chicken snitty tomato, like a Soul Origin toasted shitty sandwich at a food court. That's how lame I am. So that's where I'm going.
Hell yeah. Jamie, I'm curious. Do you remember what you said?
But I just had like a chicken salad, maybe.
Yeah, American style chicken salad.
There we go. I had it for lunch today.
And just, for the reference of the mutuals, Hastings had this complicated arrangement of avocado cheese, hash browns, barbecue sauce, and he had a specific order it went in.
Nothing sounds more Hastings than complicated arrangement.
Nothing says Rosie Piper more than her choice, which was KFC chicken and gravy.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
coming.
By Uber Eats or some Deliveroo bullshit, I imagine. She wasn't going out of the house for that.
All right, it's time to rank this thing. Alex, you can go first this time.
Cubic zirconia. It's gotta be. If there's 3 episodes there's no more than 3 episodes that I would put on this tier, so it's gotta be the top rank. It's so many quotables. I've seen it a trillion times and watched it just before and cracked up and laughed reminiscing about it. What could be ranked above it? So it's definitely Cubic zirconia.
Drew.
Oh, mate, this one's easy. It's the CZ, the cubic zirconia.
Oh, was that a riff?
It was a rap.
Look at his notes.
Bring back Drew, but
No, I'm changing my sandwich to a wrap now because I'm rapping, baby.
Oh, no. We're wrapping the
Drew's
fucking
getting tired.
I'm going to come to your house and tuck you in.
Yes, easily cubic zirconia. It spends time at the top of my list, every 6 months as I think about this question a lot. What's my favorite episode? This one has taken the cake a few times.
And Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a cubic zirconia. It's one of the best episodes of The Simpsons. It's one of the best episodes of half-hour comedy. It's probably it's up there with a couple of Seinfeld episodes and a couple of Arrested Development episodes, maybe a couple of Curbs. It is so funny. It is one of the funniest things. It's funnier than most comedy movies. That's how good it is.
In half an hour versus 2 hours, spread out. Absolutely.
And knowing now what we do about Conan, it's also kind of like a perfect distillation of that man's style into this perfect 20 minutes. It's so many things. It's comedy canon, it's Simpsons canon, it's Conan canon. It's a great episode of television.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, obviously I'm going cubic as well. I thought Desert Island Simpsons episodes, I think this just has to be on there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And this will be the 5th episode from season 4 to get a unanimous cubic zirconia, which we also call the Simpsons Index Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Excellence. And the other season 4 episodes which got a unanimous cubic, fucking perfect sweep. Homer the Heretic, where Homer stops going to church.
Great.
Lisa the Beauty Queen, New Kid on the Block, the one we mentioned earlier with Laura Powers, Mr. Plow, I don't know if you know that one, but and of course Marge vs. the Monorail. There's a fucking afternoon right there.
Yeah, that's a playlist.
Oh, awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this evening. This was an absolute treat.
Thanks for having us.
What a treat, yeah. No, that was great. Thanks for having us, man.
Absolutely. And this is the plugs portion of the show. Do you guys have plugs?
Oh, go over
Who
it,
wants
James.
to say it?
Me. We got a podcast called Community Noticeboard where we interview guests every week about suburbs they grew up in. It's a lot of fun. We're just about to have Ben Lee on the podcast talking about Bondi.
Awesome.
Had some great people recently. And it's just a lot of fun talking about old stories. Drew manages to somehow live the most embarrassing life I've ever seen.
I almost told a girlfriend story about the monorail. Maybe I'll bring that up on our pod. I got another one.
Only you.
Bit of sizzle there. On the short list of episodes that I gave you actually was Spark Raving Dad, which was the Michael Jackson episode. I thought that'd be a good alternate choice if we didn't go with this one.
Yeah.
For Drew.
Just to hear that Michael Jackson
That's one of my
again.
favorite episodes, unsurprisingly.
Just for anyone who's listened, Drew, when he was 8, used to dress up as Michael Jackson or went to a double date.
Once on a
He used to constantly dress up as Michael
Constantly
Jackson.
dress up as
I
Michael
used to
Jackson.
learn the dances from watching the film clips, I'll tell you that.
Could you do the lean move?
Did
you try to moonwalk?
all the time.
Did you show your mum your moonwalk and go, Mum,
yeah.
Could you still do it if we asked you to?
Get a couple of schooners into me, I reckon I'll bust it out.
This is why we need the pubs to open back up
Where
again.
the pubs back open.
That's it.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, thanks again. And yeah, like I said, you couldn't say more good things about your show. I think you guys have just found a winning formula, and yeah, you've had some amazing guests and really getting into sort of, niche Australian sort of stuff. I think it's a great portal for overseas listeners to sort of get the vibe of our just sort of not culture, but like just interactions and stuff.
Thanks, man.
Wonderful
Thanks,
show.
yeah.
It's a lot of fun to do. So go listen, go check us out, and appreciate it all.
Yeah.
And as for me, we've got our scripted podcast out, Pulp Fury Radio, where it's an anthology series where we got some amazing actors to do pulpy stories with us. Go check that out at pulpfuryradio.com. And we've got the Patreon, patreon.com/SideQuest Studios, where you can get bonus episodes every week. Other than that, I think that about does it. So once again, thank you guys. Thank you, Jamie.
No worries.
Thank you, Drew.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, buddy.
And I've been Elliot Jay O'Neill. That's all the mustard in the house.
Thank you for listening to the Simpsons Index podcast, which is also an online spreadsheet available at thesimpsonsindex.com.
You can chat to us online at facebook.com/The Simpsons Index or at Simpsons Index on Twitter or Instagram. Now, there's no bonus scenes for this episode, so we'll catch you next week.